Okay, welcome to this week's weekly outlook in the DeFi Dojo. Today is August 20th. We had quite a week last week. Bitcoin and crypto took a nosedive, and a lot of liquidations, right? So this just confirms we are not yet really in a bull market. We didn't quite get to the levels I thought we would, and that's okay. Sometimes you're wrong. And that's fine. We just have to adjust and act accordingly. I do still have my Bitcoin, but if we break that 25,000 level, I will be selling all of it. I will have a profit still at that point, and I'll be just fine letting it go. I have no emotional attachment to it. I don't need it. It doesn't add anything to the quality of my life. So that's how I'm able to, just keep my emotions out of it and not worry about it. If we do break that 25K level, I will be looking at the 20K level, and I'm going to show you why in these series of charts and explanations that I'm about to give you. So stay tuned, and we'll get into it. Hit the like button, and please subscribe. That helps me with the YouTube algorithms and helps me grow, and I would really appreciate that. But let's start with the dollar. The dollar's strength is hitting that trend line that we talked about last week. We actually hit it pretty perfectly. And now you can see we're opening up this week so far with a little bit of red showing, right? Our EMAs are not yet bullish. They are pointing upwards, so that's just something to be cautious about. You can see our RSI has peaked back into over the 50 level, and our MACD is still bearish as well. So we could, break this trend line, but ultimately, in order for the dollar to become somewhat bullish again, we need to break this 382 at 104.23. Should that happen, equities could see some serious drops, right? And so we want to be on the lookout for that, and so that's why we monitor the dollar strength. Let's look at equities. So looking at the S&P, we have now hit every single level that I was pointing out for the last few weeks. And now we have this nice little doji candle kind of popping up on the daily on Friday. Now, whether or not that turns into anything substantial is yet to be seen. I do think that we'll get some sort of bounce back towards the 8 EMA to maybe start the week. But make no mistake, this is a downtrend that is now starting. Our EMAs on the daily are bearish, and I do think that we can see lower here. I don't think this is it. But I do kind of want to maybe take a little bit of a short should we bounce up closer to this 8 EMA on the S&P. And you can use SPY for that. You can use SPX for that. There's also some other ETFs that short the S&P that are like bear ETFs that do like 2 times or 3 times, I think. You can also opt for the NASDAQ's SQQQ if you wanted to short something. However, just make sure that these are short-term things. These aren't things you want to hold on to for a really long time because they can really bite you when things pop back the other way and they do rebalances. So be careful with those. I do think that we can see this level down here, and there's a gap in the chart, and you can see it right here, right? And this is actually the 382, and if I zoom out, it's the 382 from this low in March to our current yearly high, right? And I know this looks like a lot of lines on here, but I use them all, so I don't want to erase them. But just to make this a little more clear, I'll get rid of that, and you can see where I've drawn from, just from here to here, and that gives us that 382 right at 43.13. And that's great. This would just be a 382 bounce, and we can continue higher, and it would be the sign of a strong trend. That's going to be what we're looking for. Should that 382 break, well, then we have lost our trend, right? And we can actually draw a trend line and see this. We can start from the low here and draw up through here, and you can see what would happen if we broke that 382. And we might get a bounce and then a move back down, and it might take quite a while for it to actually come down here, just by judging from this trend itself. And that trend would be maintained, and then we can continue higher. So we might have a lot of chop sideways action, or we could just head straight down. If we keep hitting straight down, then that's not a good sign. I do kind of want to see a bounce this week, just to give us a little bit of confirmation that maybe this trend is real and it's going to continue over the longer term. But for now, I do think we'll get a little bit of a bounce this week, and we'll see what happens from there. On the weekly, you can see we nailed the 21, and so that's another reason why I think we're going to get a bounce. right? You can see how perfectly we hit that 21. And so I think we can get a move back up towards the 44.33 area once again, which, will coincide pretty closely with the weekly 8 EMA. But right now we're in between, right? And so that just kind of means it's a no trade. We don't really want to mess too much with this because of where we are in reference to these EMAs on the weekly. We're probably going to get a little bit of a move up. We can take advantage of a little scalp there to the upside if possible, and then maybe try to short the top of it back down. That's kind of the game plan I have for equities this week. With the NASDAQ, it's kind of the same deal, except it didn't touch its 21. So it still has room down, and I have a lot of confluence down here in this zone with multiple fib levels, and there's also the same gap here, which is that green line that you can see on the daily, right? And so the NASDAQ, if it does come down, will most likely come down more than the S&P. Why is that? That's because the NASDAQ is heavily growth and lower cap companies, and it can lose more than the S&P when things go down, just like it will gain more when it's going up. It's a more risky index than the rest. So this is kind of my target for NQ. I'm not necessarily saying this week because I do think we can get a bounce. You can also see how we got this doji candle on the daily here as well, so I think we can head back up to the 8 EMA early on in the week and then maybe fall back down towards the end of the week. That 8 EMA is currently sitting right at 15,000 for the NASDAQ, and that's a big psychological number as well. We failed it last week. We'll most likely retest it this week and then see what it decides to do from there. The Dow Jones has a little bit more room down to its trend line as well, so I do think that we could see a little bit more downside on the Dow. However, the Dow is much more resilient. It's the least risky index, where the S&P kind of falls somewhere in the middle. So if you're going to be looking for some value stocks, I think you can wait a little bit more to grab some of those. Looking at the Bitcoin NASDAQ chart, this chart right here is going to help us immensely right now. Why? Because we can clearly see this downtrend, right? That we cannot break that downtrend line. We've been watching this line for weeks now, and every time we touch it, we reject it pretty hard. The EMAs are now weekly. You probably can't see them, but the EMAs are now weekly bearish. They are just now crossing bearish, and this long-term trend line here lines up very well with the 382. And so I definitely think that we can see that come down. Now, why does this help us so much? Because even if we get a bounce on equities this week, I can kind of confidently say that I'm not going to expect Bitcoin to go with it, because the confluence with this chart is just not there. I think if equities make a bounce this week, Bitcoin will just stay sideways at the very least, or come down some more. I do not recommend buying the dips right now, really, on anything, unless you're going to be super long term on it, right? Like, I bought a little bit of Tesla last week, and I'm okay sitting on those because I have confidence in Tesla. But would I do that with something like ADA or, any of these obscure altcoins? No, absolutely not. I would not. I don't even really want to do it with Bitcoin right now. Right now, I like my average on Bitcoin, and right now my plan is if it breaks 25K, I'm just going to get out and wait to buy back in at that 20K level if we fill that gap. So this chart's going to help me see where Bitcoin could potentially start moving against the NASDAQ again, and that wouldn't be until we see this 382 again or break that downtrend line. And right now we're just kind of right in the middle, so right now that just tells me I need to wait, and that's what I'm going to do. Looking at the USDT dominance chart, I'm going to probably just call this whole Wyckoff thing a wash and say that this isn't going to work on a dominance chart. Why? Because we've already had our 5 peaks. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, and the 5th one was higher, which generally you wouldn't see, and now we have a 6th one, right? This is starting to look really bullish. This is a pennant, and the formation is bullish in and of itself. And we continue to keep trying to test this 1.618 level, and this is 1, 2, 3, going on the 4th attempt. And when we find that many attempts at a resistance, it will break eventually, like it's just going to, right? And that doesn't necessarily mean like doomsday scenario for Bitcoin. What that just means is that there's more stablecoin dominance coming into the market. There's more people entering the market. And so this is longer term a good sign. If I zoom all the way out on this chart, you can see that the entire thing is just an uptrend, right? There's no downtrends in USDT dominance. This is because as time goes by, we gain more market participants in crypto, and in order to participate in crypto, they need stablecoins. And so it makes sense that the chart trends upward over a longer period of time. What we want to see for a bull market is a move towards the blue line, right? And so once we start seeing a move towards the blue line, then we can say, okay, the bull market might be starting. And in order for that to happen, we need to break that trend line right here in order for that to happen, the one that the green arrow is pointing at. So once we get that break of that trend line at some point in the distant or near future, then we can start saying, okay, the bull market's starting, right? But right now, this is clearly not the case, and we can wait and average in on potentially some lower priced Bitcoin. Looking at this chart, it's kind of the same thing. My trend lines are in different locations depending on what time frame I'm on, right? So like there's so many wicks that you can try to get this through that there's nothing real concrete that you can use other than saying, okay, we're testing the top. I want to see a move down before I start risking any more money because this could break and that wouldn't be good for my money. You can see that we are very oversold up here, and every time we get one of these little peaks, we do get a big move down. So, I mean, you could take a speculation long just on that fact alone, that we're this overbought on the RSI. But in all reality, it doesn't mean anything, right? It doesn't mean that it can't just stay up here and keep doing this for a long period of time and continue to wreak havoc on Bitcoin. I don't really want to risk it myself. I think we got plenty of time to catch whatever bull run's coming in the future. We still have like 8 months till the halving anyway. So I don't think we're missing anything, to be honest, even if we do bounce from here and start heading back up. Here's the total chart. So we definitely broke that trend as well. And we're sitting at the 1 trillion mark. This is a big psychological barrier. And if this breaks, then we're going to see 950 and then potentially the golden pocket down here. So this is kind of where I want to buy again, is when I see total down here. That would be a great spot for me to try to average in some more Bitcoin and Ethereum. But we're probably ways away from that if that's going to happen anyway. Looking at the CME chart for Bitcoin, we have a gap from 27 to 27.5 that was left over the weekend, and that doesn't necessarily mean we're going to go fill that right away because we haven't even touched 25.2 on this chart yet. And this is the level that needs to hold. You can see how open this space is below that 25.2 mark, which is why if I see this break, I'm likely going to just start cashing out Bitcoin. I've already sold a little bit, but I do still hold the majority of it. I sold almost completely out of ETH because I think it's going to suffer more if we do get a bigger capitulation. But then I'll be looking for this big gap down here, right? And this is sitting in between 23 to 21,000. That's kind of where I would love to buy Bitcoin again. If I have to sell here, I want to buy back here. You can see we are oversold. The MACD is bearish as well. And it's just not a great place until we see some sort of bounce, right? When the RSI is sitting under 30 on a daily chart, we can stay bearish for a very long time. It doesn't mean it's not like a 4-hour RSI dollar cost average spot, because it's a 4-hour, we can get out of it quickly and move to the top of that RSI again. But on the daily chart, it takes quite a while for it to actually get back again, more often than not. In this case here, you can see it didn't, right? But this was kind of an anomaly and starting our uptrend. Here, we're kind of starting our downtrend potentially, and so that's why I wouldn't count on this to just be some straight back up movement like we saw here. If we look at the Ethereum futures chart, it actually got down to this spot right here on the spot chart, but the futures chart didn't show it. So that tells me that we can still move down to that level again. And I think Jungle Book was like, man, he really wanted that 1,400 or 1,500 Ethereum, and I said, don't worry, I think you'll get another opportunity. And that's because I do think that we're gonna see this opportunity at some point. And even if we do get some bounces here and there, and everybody's all bullish again at some point, I would much rather just wait for this gap to fill, because we keep getting really close to it. And here's a lower low. So here's the thing too. Here's your high, and then you have a lower high. Here's your low, and now we have a lower low. And so this is technically now a downtrend, right? So even if we get a move all the way back up to here and retest that trend again, this is still likely going to make another lower high and then come back down and make another lower low and fill that gap. And so that's kind of what I'm picturing here. So I'm not going to get all FOMO-y even if this bounces. Looking at the spot chart, you can see that we have definitely broken the whole yearly downtrend here. And the candle itself didn't break, but we have now opened underneath it this week. And I just left a message in the channel not too long ago. I said I still don't recommend buying any dips, and this is why. You can see we opened up underneath it, and we've already rejected it, like perfectly. There's your wick on our brand new weekly candle, and that is what it's showing. So the 382 at 1691 is a big spot. If you see this break it, then okay, fine. Maybe we can go retest the bearish weekly EMAs now. But at the very least, that's all I would expect to see. This is now bearish. Bitcoin is venturing on bearish on the spot chart weekly as well. You can see those EMAs are pointed down, and it would need to do something very substantial this week in order to prevent those from crossing. So I'm not liking this whatsoever. And that 25.2 mark is very important. You can see how much space there is to 22K as our next most important level, should that fail. And that's quite a big fall. So I think that covers everything. I know it's not the best news you've ever heard, but we keep it real around here, and we want to make sure our money is safe. And that's what I try to do. So if you guys have any questions or chart requests, please feel free to drop them in the chat now, and I can go over them. GMX. Yes, I can. Do I have that one here? I've been hearing some bad things. Yeah, that looks terrible. I wouldn't touch that. Not in a million years. We called the top like months ago, and it's just remained the top. There's not even really a bottom I can measure yet, but you can see that we're into the fear and panic zone now. And so this can just continue lower and could actually just die altogether. I do know that this is some sort of perps trading, decentralized exchange, if I recall correctly. And there's going to be a lot of competition for that now, right? So what separates them from the rest of the pack is something I'd be asking myself. Why are they better than the rest? Can they easily be duplicated and create more hype with something new? Probably. And the chart looks terrible. So I would not be buying that. I would be selling that for sure. ARB. All right, we got to go to the 4-hour on ARB because it's not a lot of history. Look at that 1.618 bounce. I love that. I think I drew that last week, that uptrend. And look at how perfectly it did that on that liquidation event, right at 90 cents. So, yeah, this has a potential to move back up from here, just because of that, that big wick and that 1.618 bounce. But, like, really, it's probably going to trade in this 90 cent to 135 range for a really long time until the alt season starts, which is probably a really long time from now. So this would be the range. You want to accumulate it for the long term, but just understand that this is going to be something that you need to do for long term. And if you want to sell near that 130 mark again, if we get there, I would, because it's likely going to come back down and repeat this process and create a very long sideways accumulation range. You can see that we have a downtrend forming now. So if we just kind of go like this, we might not even get up to that level again. And when that breaks that downtrend, then maybe we can start talking about something else. But in the meantime, this is definitely bearish. If you have a bag already, would you dump or hold longer? GMX, I mean, I don't think I would hold that. I wouldn't be holding that at all, probably. I don't know what it does for you, but if it's similar to the other exchange tokens where it gets you, like better fees when you're trading on their exchange, then it's worth it for you there if you're actually using it and decreasing your fees. But like, I wouldn't hold a whole bunch of it, because the losses you're going to incur compared to the gains you're going to save on trading fees probably aren't worth it, right? So like, if you just want to hold a little bit just for trading, that's fine. But that's really the only use case I would see holding on to it for, is if you were using it for trading fees reduction. OP. So OP hit the top of my target box. I still think it can fall a little lower, but it's a pain in the ass, this one, I'll tell you that much. This token is like, you either just need to hold on to it and wait a long time, or trying to trade it's like a nightmare, to be honest with you. Like, I got lucky when I found the distribution up here and shorted it, but I didn't really get as much out of it as I wanted to. And then I tried to long it when we broke resistance, and then it took a dive on me. Luckily, I got out in time without getting hurt too much. But really, this is an uptrend, so that's nice to see for the long term. And whenever it gets these big wicks down here, it's nice to be able to buy that if you have the opportunity, but it usually doesn't give you the opportunity for too long. I mean, this was 136 to 120. I mean, that's a pretty big move in a short period of time. But we are bearish here on the daily, and the RSI and MACD have not really gotten into super bearish territory yet. So I would say you would need to wait for a 150 break, 151, 152, in order to be bullish enough to try to take this to that 170 again, but this is our resistance. It didn't even show us any divergence here, which is what pissed me off as well. Like, there was no divergence to try to see like this could be coming down. So it was kind of just a real dick move, honestly. But it is bearish, and I wouldn't be buying here just yet. If I really, really wanted to buy it, it would have to be down in the 70 to 90 cent range again for me to consider it. This uptrend here broke, and I'm not sure if it's trying to form a new one. We need more data to see that, and so this would just be a wait for me. If you're already holding on to some and you have it under $1, then I would hold on. If you have it above, in this range here, and you can kind of get out at break even right now, I would. And if you're holding it up here, then you have to ask yourself if you want to hold on to this for a really long time or not, or maybe start investing in something else with that money instead. So would you be looking to buy Bitcoin at 21 to 23K? Yes, that's not where I would like totally load the boat. It's just where I would start dollar cost averaging in again after selling the 25,000 break. There's a lot of people saying that we can go lower, right? I am still under the assumption that this is the bottom. Now, could that be wrong? Absolutely. There is a massive hole in the volume profile here. This is where most of the people bought. And if I zoom in a little bit, you'll see this point of control move up to right here, which is right around 19.2. And that 19.2 level is very important. If you guys have been in here for a long time, you've heard me say that number quite a bit. So that 19.2 level can hit. The 20K level is like this psychological phenomenon, right? Where if we start falling below 25K, everyone's going to start calling for 20K, right? Everyone's going to be expecting it. And there's two scenarios that could play out. We could actually just only go to 22K because everyone's waiting for 20, and it never actually gets there and leaves the gap, right? So I would dollar cost average in a little bit at 22K just for that sheer reason, right? Then if we filled the gap, then I would probably load up a little bit more. And I'm going to use the same 25, 25, 50 rule, or you can use the 25, 25, 25, 25 rule, which is figure out how much money you want to put in Bitcoin altogether. Then on your first buy at the level you're looking for, put in 25% of those funds. Then if we fall to the next level, put in another 25% of those funds. Then you're going to have a remaining 50%, right? And then it's up to you to decide whether or not you want to wait to dollar cost average in higher, waiting for a bounce, or lower, depending on if we break 20K or not. Because if we break 20K, that opens up a whole new can of worms. That opens up this huge hole right here where we could fall all the way back to the lows. But the point of control is right at 19.2. And so that is kind of the level that needs to hold in order for us to not make new lows. So if we see 19.2 break, then yeah, new lows are definitely possible. I'm definitely going to be keeping an eye on my PMAR indicator here, and if we cross that average or not. And if we do, then all hell can break loose, because this indicator here, it tells me a lot. This is what helped me buy the bottom in December, is when I see this cross here. This is when I started recommending dollar costing average into Bitcoin, is when I saw that cross that average line. So if we cross back down below it again, then depending on where the price is when that happens, will kind of give me an idea of how far we can actually fall. But you can see how long we can stay down here in this blue area for a really long time. So we'll have to see what happens when we get there. Obviously, I'm going to keep you guys updated with the weekly outlooks and in the charts channel. So things are going to get a little interesting, I think. We're kind of right in the middle of all of our moving averages here, and so there is quite a bit of support. We could just see a bunch of sideways motion again for weeks after this big move. That's typically what happens, right? We get a big candle, and then like 2 months of sideways, slightly down. Big candle, I don't know, this was 3 months of sideways, slightly down. And so now we have a big red candle, and we might get like 2 months of sideways, slightly up. Who knows? It's not worth trying to day trade. I know that much. If you can't catch these massive candles, this is typically what happens, is like you'll get a big move and then all of retail rushes in to try to trade it, and then it just goes stagnant and drives everyone nuts. This is the MO of this cycle of the market, this part of the cycle, I mean. So long term is the way that we need to look at this, and have your levels picked out, have a plan in place, figure out how much money you're planning on investing, and try to buy percentages based on your risk level at those levels. Understanding that, you know, there is still a gap on Bitcoin all the way down here. Let's see, where is it? This isn't the, yeah, this is it. I don't even know, oh yeah, way down here at the 11K and the 9K mark. Now that doesn't mean those are going to fill. There are gaps that never fill, and so totally not something I'm looking at as a possibility. You can see on the daily we are very oversold. On the weekly we are not, so there is still room down to that. We are under 50 and pointing down here, so there is still room below, and I do think that we're going to fill that gap, and that's where I want to try. Right? And if things start going south from there, well, then I'll have to consider cutting it and waiting some more. All right, so is Disney getting close to a buy? I still think Disney's going to $75. And that's where I think it's going, is right down here. It's still in a downtrend, and it's been in a downtrend all year long, even with all of the rest of the equities markets going up. So this just tells me it's super weak. It had a bounce after earnings, but it still never broke downtrend, and so I wasn't faked out by that, and I'm still waiting on my $75 Disney, and that's where I would love to buy it. PayPal and Apple. Let's go to PayPal. Big disappointment right now, but I'm still going to hold it. All right, so see this like falling wedge we have here? We're not too far away from the bottom of it, so I'm not going to panic sell. Unless we break down below that and start getting down into like, you know, the lower 50 area. So I'm still going to hold. I actually added a couple more, to be honest with you, because I do think that this is undervalued compared to the rest of the market. And I have, you know, technicals telling me this is where you should buy. And I don't think it's going to die. I mean, it's widely used. I think this is a falling wedge, which is a bullish pattern. And all it needs to do is break up out of it, and it can start moving pretty good. So I'm going to hold on to PayPal. Apple, long term, I think it's always good to just have Apple. The last time we bought was all the way in January down here, like near the 125 area, 130 area, and I'm still holding it. I did sell a little bit just to take some profits, but Apple's kind of going to be my largest holding kind of going forward, and that's because it's the most resilient. Whenever there's bad things happening in the market, most people just take their money and move it to Apple or bonds. I do think that we can see 165 again, though, because that would retest the downtrend, right? So here's your downtrend, the yellow line. Retest the downtrend. It's also going to be right where the 382 is, as well as the uptrend line, right? So like this orange line you see is like the all-time uptrend line for like 20 years. And that's why I loved buying it right here when we were under it. And so we could can you turn your mic off? Mute. Okay. So yeah, right around the 165, 166 level is where I would love to add some more. That would be your downtrend retest, and then we can continue on up, I think. And if you look, I'll just zoom out, and you can see this trend line. Whenever it touches it, like that's when you want to buy Apple, right? And you don't get that many opportunities. So that's why I love buying that trend line. The daily's super oversold, so even if you wanted to add right now, I don't think you're going to get hurt over the long term. We're down pretty heavily from the high, so it's definitely a good spot to add Apple. I would never say don't buy Apple. I would pretty much just say just buy Apple all the time. Company is probably the best one to buy in the entire stock market, to be honest. All right, can we do XDC and AKT? Are those both cryptos, Donkey? I think they are. I know AKT is. Yes, okay. XDC, crypto, Qcoin. Okay, so it had its move. I would be selling it there. And that's a golden pocket touch, it looks like. Come on, magnet. There we go. Yeah, so it peaked into the golden pocket, sold off. I'd be selling now if you got, if you bought it in down here and be waiting quite a while. I don't know what this is, but this looks like it's starting an overall downtrend right now. And in order for me to be a buyer, I want to see this find support below, return to the golden pocket, and then that's where I would be buying it if it did that sort of pattern. But right now, if you bought it down here, I would definitely be taking profits here unless it broke through the 10-cent mark. If it breaks through the 10-cent mark, then we can start talking about becoming, a little bit more midterm bullish on whatever this project is. And AKT. I haven't added that one yet. But I do like it for the bull market. Which one did I use? Probably Qcoin. Nope, not here. All right, so I think I gotta get the other chart. It's not here either. Which one did I use? I don't know which chart I used. But let's just do this. I do have some. I did sell most of it though, but I have a little left. So, man, I wouldn't be buying it here, to be honest with you. If you still have some, take some profits and keep a little bit for the bull run. But I do think that this is an uptrend and it's looking good. On the weekly, it's bullish. And it's one of the more bullish looking charts in crypto that exists right now. But usually after a move like this, we get another move like this, right? And so I can totally see all of this repeating from here going back down. The 1.618 would kind of be the midterm target at 250-ish. If we can get it back above these other fibs. So we would need to break 138.5 in order to get us up to the next level, and then break 175 to get us up to that 250 mark. And so I would use these fibs here to kind of, justify trying to risk that position. But if you're in this already from a while ago when I called it out, I think you should definitely take some profits. I mean, what are we in this game for if we're not trying to make money, right? This isn't the whole just hold on forever mentality, I think is the worst idea ever. You can always sell when you're way up high, and if you just have the patience to wait a couple weeks or even a couple months, it'll likely come back down. There are exceptions to that. I mean, COS was one of them, right? I took profits on that way too early, but I don't really care. I don't need to hold on to these things forever. I'm trying to gain wealth, and right now the definition of wealth does not include crypto. It includes money that we use every day. So that's how I determine what I'm buying and selling. And it just helps me not have emotions towards these things. Sometimes it doesn't work out. Sometimes I wish I held, but most of the time I'm glad I sold. All right, so are there any other chart requests or questions? Is BNB going to zero? Yeah, man, I hope so. I really do. I hope it goes to zero. Let's look at it. I don't think it's going to zero, but I do think that this is going to be the thing to short eventually. And it broke its 236 at 230. And there's just wide open spaces here. Like this can go all the way down to 115 bucks if we get a major event. So it's been the one that's held up the most compared to all crypto, like all major, like the top market cap tokens. And I do think that this will capitulate at some point. I don't know when, I don't know how, but it will. Like I'm definitely not a buyer of it. I'm not holding it. I've been trying to short it for like a year now, and it just always goes back up for some freaking reason. So I'm not gonna like, it's definitely worn me out, but I do think that this is gonna fall. And I'll jump on a scalp, but I'm not gonna swing it because I've been burned too many times trying to short it. But if you haven't and you want to try to swing it, I think this is a great time to try. It's broken its support. The EMAs on the weekly are really bearish. You can see it tried to get over the 8 EMA here, had a big move down, and so now it can continue. Technically, 187 would be your next mark for support. You can see that's where it held before. And after that, like this can really fall if it breaks that 185 to 187 level. Hope you can take a look at costs. Yes, I can. All right, so my attempts to chart this in any fashion have failed. And that's because it just keeps going up. So I don't want to short it. I don't hold any. I wish I did, but I'm not buying it up here. Just looking at the weekly, this made a higher high. Our RSI made a lower high. But there's not a lot of data to be able to actually figure this out in any sort of real way. If we look at the daily, we're also divergent. You can see this was much higher here and pointing down, and this is pointing up. So that is also divergent. This could see oversold. Whenever CAS finds oversold on the daily, it seems to be the time to buy, and so maybe you want to wait for that. But that doesn't mean that this entire trend can't break or will break. All trends do break eventually. Kind of gives us a little bit of a rising wedge look here, which means it could continue up into this tighter zone before it does fall. But I do think that this will have a major liquidation event at some point, because people are in this from like stupid low, and their profits right now where we sit are insane. Anybody who bought down here. So it's just a matter of when people down here decide they want to take profits, or if something happens to the project to scare people. When it does start falling, it will capitulate pretty hard, I imagine, and I think that we can wait around for that day in order to buy into this, and then just hold on to it for the bull market if you believe in it. But for me, I'm just going to be patient and wait a while. I missed the boat in the beginning, and so that's fine. I'm not going to chase up here. If you're holding in from like way down here, at least get your money back out of it and hold the rest. I wouldn't be holding on to everything that you bought if you're able to take profits and make something nice out of it. And then just wait for that big event that'll eventually come one day. All right. So if that's all, thank you all for coming. I appreciate all the questions and all the chart requests. I'm going to post all of these in the weekly Outlook channel for your reference for the rest of the week. And I hope you guys have a good week. Stay safe. Do not buy the dip. At least I'm not. Have a good week. Bye.